Ezra Klein had a piece in the New York Times, because that's where he gets to write. And
name dropped David Dayen's critique of his book, and then kind of
because Dayen had a big fight, and there's a lot of that, and I'm sure people are going to write in response to this, but there's a couple of things that's sort of fascinating about this. They move from the granular to the 15,000 to 20,000 perspective, sort of like literally from sentence to sentence. And they move from the idea that like this is a policy prescription. I don't see any contradiction between abundance and the goals of the left. Okay, so when you talk about the goals of the left, you're talking about policy, right?
Should be.
I mean, the goal of the left is not just to present a messaging campaign. Mm-hmm. The goals of the left are policy. With the left that he's talking about, and even in the context of the Democratic Party, we're not talking that left, right? We're not talking like socialism. For him, he's talking about sort of like some combination of maybe social democracy coupled with the anti-monopoly Democrats, and they're not always aligned.
Right.
But when you say the goals, you're talking about policy, but there's also an element that in their argument that this is the way, like Derek Thompson said at that thing, we're going to convince people to join us. And this makes no sense based on just data, because their argument is that we don't have a government with state capacity. They cite moments where government can cut through this, like Shapiro in Pennsylvania, where incidentally Kamala Harris lost. Right? Their argument is that local politicians, he starts off his piece by saying like, the book is largely a critique of Democrats of governed in the places where they've held power, but the obvious targets of that critique, blue state governors like Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul, and top Obama and Biden officials have largely embraced it. So it's a critique of blue state governance, and the argument being that if we get it right there, it's going to resonate with Romney Republicans. But they also cite that Shapiro did this in Pennsylvania, and in the last election, the swing state, Democrats lost that election. Much of this is also about focused on affordable housing. We need affordable housing, but affordable housing is not a particular problem in Pennsylvania or in Michigan or in Wisconsin or in Arizona, or Nevada. I mean, it's either a political program or it's like how to get power, or it's not. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that there's anybody who is involved in policy who doesn't think that regulations that inhibit the government should be always questioned as to what the balanced net positive is. But it's as if they strawman it as if there's some power out there in the Democratic Party that is like purposefully doing this and has an agenda outside of that.
Okay. He's now said that it's been embraced by these blue state governors. So I don't understand what the problem is then.
Now
they embraced it. It's just very recent, I guess.
Yes. He writes like
hasn't taken effect yet.
He has to make it like, I support making it radically easier to form unions. I don't support making it harder to build anything and everything because of unions. And oil companies and billionaire real estate developers.
That's all the same.
So he has to say the union thing because Josh Barro last week said the problem was unions.
Talking about the groups.
He says, my view of power, because he says my friends and frenemies on the left don't think I have a concept of power. I think he's talking about Dayen, to be honest with you. My view of power is more classically liberal. In his book, Liberalism, The Life of an Idea, Edmund Fawcett describes it neatly. Human power was implacable. It could never be relied on to behave well. Whether political, economic, or social, superior power of some people over others tended inevitably to arbitrariness and domination unless resisted and checked. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I happen to believe in this. I happen to believe, when I talk about, why I believe there should be a mixed economy. I don't like our mix right now, but a mixed economy is because I do think that power is a dynamic. And anything unchecked and anything where there's a lack of competition is not going to bring you the best results, ultimately.
Did he just say he was a classical liberal?
Well, I don't think he's talking about
My view of power is more classically liberal. I'm just saying.
But to take this view, he writes, means power will be ill-used by your friends as well as by your enemies, by your political opponents as well as by your neighbors. From this perspective, there are no safe reservoirs of power. See, I don't even think his concept of power in this, power is a dynamic. And Fawcett, I believe, would also say this. It is relational. And the idea that maybe in some very narrow instances, somehow environmentalists or consumers or citizens have more power than moneyed interests, whatever they may be. I just don't think that's the case, broadly speaking. And this is, he's eliding this by saying that power exists almost like in a vacuum, like not in relationship to other players in the political sphere.
It's dynamic also in the sense that power can increase. It's usually along the lines of money. So right now we have more wealth concentrated in the hands of a few people than we had decades prior to this. I would argue that has increased the value, the power of capitalists and people with money. It's also coincided with the Citizens United decision and the explosion of dark money in our politics. That seems to be a very clear vision of power that if you could articulate, but he chooses to disperse his power analysis.
You sound monomaniacal right now. I think the fact that we're in a second...
Well, wait, let me get to that. He writes, corporations sometimes serve the national interest and sometimes they betray it. Now, let's be clear. Yes, he's saying a broken clock is right, can be right twice a day. The same is true for governments, for unions, churches, and for nonprofits. A lot is lost when you collapse the complex interests of politics into a simple morality plate. Now, he's the one who's taken it into a moral universe. I don't think there's anything intrinsically bad or morally bad about corporations. I'm incorporated.
Right.
I'm incorporated. I've been incorporated for 35 years. The question is what interests do they represent? But by making it a moral, by him strawmanning that it's a morality thing and not simply a power thing. Nobody talks about the morality of to the extent that people talk about the morality, it is a tactic. Yeah. No genuine leftist thinks. Zephyr Teachout doesn't sit around going the real problem with corporations is that they're evil.
Yeah.
No.
The outcome.
The problem, it's that they have too much influence in pursuing their interests, which are misaligned with the rest of society's. And by pushing into morality, that's where he gets to say in this article, and to me, and to apparently all his critics, your notion of politics is simplistic. And they go on to say that, like, I worry about a politics that often sees only problems of corporate and oligarchic control. This is really, really disingenuous to say that these academics, these writers, only see one thing. Again, is so reductive and condescending. Now, it is true that if you want to go out with a message, a political message, it needs to be consistent and narrow and repeated over and over again.
Yep.
That is true to win.
Put a pin in that.
But wait,
Put a pin in that.
Are we talking politics or are we talking policy?
Yeah, that's the question.
Because the idea that somehow, in fact, you could even see it within the context of the Biden administration, there was an examination of regulation, and there was complaints about regulation, and it was used by the right. But when you look at like what inhibited Build Back Better as a political matter, it was when Joe Manchin got on the phone with a bunch of billionaires from No Labels, and in the summer of 2021, there's leaked audio of that, incidentally. And they all told him, hey, man, don't do this. That was after he said, this bill should be $6 trillion or $9 trillion, like bigger than Bernie said.
And he worries about the fight of concentrated corporate power being too totalizing of a theory of power that it has lost a clear view of policy. But why is he extricating policy from achieving political power? This is a right. He's segmenting.
He sometimes does and he sometimes doesn't.
Right, but that's the point. Is like, yeah. Is it the policy that is being sold to the American public that is going to sell abundance to everybody and is going to create electoral success? Is it that, or are you just saying that this is good governance? And the politics of it are different, because you asked him and you said that political movements are built on good villains, having a clear villain. And he basically says that he disagrees with that entire notion. So then in and of itself, if there's a variety of villains for abundance, then the policy should sell itself to people. But it's not. There's been polling that's shown this, that people across independents overwhelmingly back an anti-oligarchic agenda, and the Democratic Party base does. So he's on high saying my policy is better and you all should understand that, as opposed to making the argument that it's going to be a winning formula.
The anxiety, but I worry about a politics that so often only sees politics of corporate and oligarchic control. And it's great that Zoran's running his campaign, because he, again, has all these sorts of zoning reforms and single staircase reforms and that sort of stuff.
That must be purged at the altar of only corporations are evil.
It's setting my monomania absolutely insane right now. But actually what they're concerned about is people prioritizing problems of corporate and oligarchic control.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is so top down. I think Kyle Kalinske said it best, was talking about this, how this doesn't have grassroots support. It's being imposed from the top via this book and then the money that's behind some of these festivals that they're doing to support it. And you can even sense it in the way that Ezra frames its salience politically, where...
But he's only selling this. I mean, all of this is to sell it to the politicians.
Right, but the point is that, okay, so he's trying to he is separating the policy from the movement that it can create. What I think the left is saying is that is such a democratic elitist way to view how you are phrasing your political movement and presenting it to the American public. These professional Democrats are killing us because they don't have any faith that people can come to a conclusion about what the real problem is in this country on their own, and that they're already there, and that the Democratic Party should be responsive to it. They are creating some sort of barrier, more barriers between a party that is increasingly out of touch, elitist, staffed by consultants and lawyers, and professional Democrats. And they're making that worse, where the grassroots is trying and banging at the door, and some people are paying attention. And if you have the abundance guys standing in between saying, this is not good politics. Who are you to say?
And here's another thing that is also like just in the piece. Don't get me wrong. Corporations and billionaires do have too much power over the economy and the government. The tax code is deformed. I'm skipping around here. The campaign finance system designed for them. The markets in which corporate concentration raise prices and chokes off competition. All kinds of facially neutral processes are bent toward their enrichment. The big beautiful bill cuts $1 trillion in taxes for American making more than $500,000. But these are the problems Democrats already know how to see. What bedevils the party is the problems they refuse to see.
Hold on. Let's read that again.
These are the problems that Democrats already know how to see. But wait, what?
Wait, do you have a footnote? Where has that where has that been ever shown in actuality? What do you mean this is the problems that they already know how to see?
And
are
then,
Democratic officials or Democratic
argument
voters?
Okay. But even if you stipulate that they already see these problems,
great,
and they are so geared towards addressing them, let's just stipulate that.
Sure.
What bedevils the party is the problems they refuse to see. And then he goes on to say, quote, Steve Tellis, who is a part of the Nicholson, populism only works if it's full spectrum populism. If it looks like you only deploy populism to attack the alternative governing coalition to yours, then people don't believe it. They don't believe you're really on their side. They think you're just a regular partisan. Well, what's fascinating about this is that that's exactly how you would describe corporations. Who else demonizes corporations? Steve Bannon. Like, there's your full spectrum populism. It's how you address it and who you choose as the villain that defines what the solution is to the problem you are pointing out. Moneyed control and disempowerment by regular people can be orchestrated by various different groups. If you want to choose on it, it could be the Jews. Or it could be just moneyed interests. But then he goes on to say that, like, essentially he's saying, like, there needs to be a sister soldier or something like that. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is the way the book is written, too. There's these sort of bromides. And ones that where you could sort of like, oh, I agree about we should have good policy. Good policy outcomes do dictate politics. But then as soon as like it gets to the edge, it pivots off to something else.
Right. It's lip service.
Really is the problem? Are we really just not ignoring the needs of like marginalized and under like capitalized, if you want to call it that, in our society? The working class in our society? I don't think so. And his argument is that like is exclusively like the thing that inhibits our politics is just these sort of random regulations that have been proposed by groups. Now, Thompson's, he doesn't point it out as this, although he walks you through it. It's really an anti-tax movement that inhibits government giving grants to the NIH in the way that is less risk averse. But he doesn't point it out at that. He says it's the same thing. He draws the parallel between the two explicitly.
Right. And it's just he basically says that these are the politics that are going to win for the Democrats. But it's also it's because it's so intelligent, because it like has a theory of power that's more dispersed. But there's no evidence that that's the case. I mean, honestly,
I don't know how you go.
Pre-abundance was the Harris campaign. Like there were some good things in it, but in her housing policy, but a lot of it was focused on supply side, not about decommodification, and about furthering our system of home ownership that is more geared towards upper middle class and upper class voters. These are like the suburban Republicans that abundance is supposed to target. And she got shellacked.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that he can provide for this having a good.
Well, he does,
and I'm sorry that he is doing complete revisionist history about how Obama campaigned. I have a lot of issues with how Obama was president in terms of being the executive, but he ran, even in 2012, when it looked like he could lose to Romney, he pivoted to attacking him on the 47% thing, on the rich guy car elevator thing. And in 2008, he ran to the left of Hillary Clinton on the war and also went and talked about Wall Street, not in the way that
That's why he ran against NAFTA.
Yes.
He had to send Ashton Goolsbee up to Canada in a secret mission to tell the Canadians, don't believe what Obama is saying. So, and so did Bill Clinton, ran on a brand of populism. Now, he says that they're the most successful Democratic presidents. But the irony is that the book is ostensibly about local, like state, municipal, blue state governance, and then cites Obama and Clinton as the most successful presidencies. Now, they may have been the most popular.
They may have provided the most meal tickets.
They may have been the most popular, but they did shit all for local Democratic politicians. Obama lost 1,000 seats in over the course of his 2 terms. And Bill Clinton lost the House for the first time in 30 some odd years. And Bill Clinton's popularity, incidentally, was very much,
Who's this? Matt Iglesias
back in 2016. The whole Democratic Party is now a smoking pile of rubble. The down ballot party has withered, and Obama's policy legacy will be largely repealed.
Yeah. So I just, this is a more libertarian viewpoint in terms of governance, but I'm still stuck on the idea that this is, yeah, we have a different theory of how we would govern 100%. Although some of that stuff, I feel like with the zoning deregulation has been incorporated into campaigns like Mamdani's, and it was always there all along. But for this to first be some sort of movement, you have to win with the abundance agenda being on the ticket, which is like honestly something that they're selling. And there really isn't evidence to show that this would be an electoral success. Even the presidencies that governed in an abundancy, liberal, pro-free market way, Bill Clinton and Obama, these presidencies that he cited, they did not run on this stuff. So it can't be both. It can't both be something that's going to create, because some think tanks came up with it and some authors wrote some things down, that this completely top-down thing is going to galvanize voters to win elections. It can't be that when you look at how Obama and Clinton actually ran. And it can't be both things, is really my point.
It's motivated reasoning. Stephen Tellis described there as a political scientist at Johns Hopkins. I remember when Vox was hiring him to shit on Nancy MacLean's Democracy in Chains book that went into Buchanan and the long libertarian billionaire conspiracy against your democracy. I think these people need to be treated with the utmost concern and caution. And look, maybe they just all happen to believe all these things that the Koch brothers and whoever like, and maybe Nancy MacLean's a big conspiracy theorist, but I would read that book and I'd read Marshall Steinbaum's take on it, because, yeah, I mean, it's just a political scientist, or is he a longtime libertarian think tank guy?
Kleinsman, I love you guys, but I'm so tired of the abundance BS. The only people who talk about it as much as you guys are paid to do so. Well, I mean, that's the point. I mean, because they're in the New York Times. They're in the Atlantic. Listen, I got a story here about what's happening with the Genius Act. And the main obstacle to it right now is that Thune opened it up to amendments, and that one of the Republican senators put in an amendment about a credit card provision that was a tag along that is slowing it down. But the longer the bill stays out there, and the more people talk about it, and the more they call their senators, and the more the senators feel some heat about it, the better chance it has of not passing. And so, bear with us, because this is how these things, this is going to be much more important through 2026 and through 2028. But right now, this is where they're sort of tilling the ground. They're planting the seeds, and it is much easier to take out a seedling than it is a tree.
I wish I was around in 1987 to be on a radio show and try to end the DLC before it could, get Bill Clinton to the White House and, end big government.
1987.
87, that's what I said, yeah.
Cuxhumer, I read Ezra's theory of power to mean simply that the revolution isn't coming. Money isn't getting disempowered anytime soon. The Democratic coalition better accrue some material achievements in their favor where they hold power if there's any hope in building that power. I agree that they need to legislate, but we saw some examples of disempowerment of money under the Biden administration. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau provided a lot of material support.
Yep. Yeah. But it's not a linear thing, and it can't just be antitrust. We have to tax the hell out of these people.
No, I mean, of course. And I think he's probably for raising taxes too. I mean, the point isn't, and nobody, I got news for you. David Dayen is not calling for the revolution. Matt Stoller is not calling for the revolution. Zephyr Teachout is not calling for the revolution.
Lennon Dayen.
This is all stuff. This is all just sort of like Brandeisian. This has all existed in this country before.
FDR.
Teddy Roosevelt was a trust buster.
I do think there's a sense which this, broadly speaking, is a post-democratic political movement that doesn't really... The reason it's top down is because they don't give a shit about the down.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the point. That's what they're arguing. There's too much, too much input from the peeps. When they say the groups, they're saying the peeps.
In the Democratic Party, there's too much input from the grassroots, apparently, for the abundance people.
Q from Boston.
Unbelievable.
I graduated high school in 2016. My entire childhood education, literally every year, myself and classmates were told we were guinea pigs. Constant shifts in teaching practice and multiple rollouts of standardized testing and nothing to show for it. Exactly. And you know who was disempowered in that? The groups. The groups.
Over the group's head.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.